Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Healing from a Trauma Bond, with special guest Megan Marshall. We are so excited to have everyone tuned in today. A little bit about Just Be You before we get started. Just Be You is a brand new nonprofit based out of Ohio. We're aiming to provide education and resources to and for the mental health community. We want to provide education in the form of webinars, resources in local areas. I work with two other really great ladies. We're all in different areas. I work with Melissa Sargent. She's in the Monroe County area, and Crystal Ellison in the Wayne County area in Michigan. Crystal is also the co-founder of an app called Be Positive that we have teamed up with. Be Positive will be available soon on iPhone and Android. It focuses on emotional and behavioral intelligence. So if you want any information on that, feel free to like us on Facebook, reach out to Crystal, and she can give you a ton of information about Be Positive. Also, before we get started today, I want to go over just a few housekeeping items. We just ask that everybody stays muted to cut down on background noise. We will have time at the end of the webinar for any questions. If you do have questions, you can utilize the chat box or you can feel free to unmute. That's fine. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. When somebody experiences abuse, the trauma to their mental health can be severe. It can be very long lasting. The trauma of abuse can create powerful and sometimes confusing feelings that are hard to manage, especially when the abuse is cycled with kindness, support, or intimacy. It's human behavior. Our human behavior naturally creates bonds with others who show us kindness, making the cycle of abuse and kindness or affection a very dangerous and hard cycle to break. The emotional bond that is formed with an abuser is known as a trauma bond. Okay, this bond develops over time, and the victim may not realize that they are in an abusive relationship because of the manipulation and the positive reinforcement of their abuser. So finally, I would like to introduce everyone to Megan. Megan is not only a survivor of abuse, but an inspiration to everyone who meets her. She's been on a healing journey after cutting ties with her abuser after 7 years. So Megan, first off, if you'd like, I want to thank you for joining us, first of all. And then if you'd be
I'm happy to
willing,
be here.
thank you. And if you want to take a few minutes to tell us about yourself, that would be great.
Okay, well, I am Megan Marshall. I currently work at a domestic violence shelter in DeRidder, Louisiana. Not something I ever saw myself doing, but it is now my full-on purpose in life. I'm a survivor of abuse, the mother of a survivor. I'm an advocate and a wife and a student. And I am just starting a year of just healing out loud. It's my new mission.
Thank you. So to get started, I know a lot of people often wonder, why victims don't just leave. What makes it so hard? And this is where I believe the strength of a trauma bond, it really just falls on deaf ears. So can you tell us a little bit about why you stayed with your abuser for so long before we get into your actual story?
Absolutely. Well, statistics say that victims leave 7 to 9 times before they ever really leave for good. It's not easy. I mean, you've got financial ties and control factors that play a part. So I always get frustrated when people are like, why didn't you just leave? It's never that easy. But specifically with trauma bonding, you get truly addicted to the highs and lows of it. You work so hard for the good days and for the kindness and for the wonderful things that they'll say to you. And then you just kind of put up with the crap for the rest. And every day you're working for that high again. And when you leave, all that happens is that high. all that happens is that I love you, I'm sorry, you're amazing. And they tell you all these wonderful things. And then you're just sucked back in because now you're floating again. You're at the top of the roller coaster. We're like, and then your stomach drops right away once you're back in it.
Yeah. And then, that attachment and the love for the victim is very, very real. I know oftentimes there's so much manipulation happening that the victims will even sometimes believe that the abuse is what they deserve, or, they
Oh,
think it's
absolutely.
they think it's normal, or this is how all relationships are. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think my situation is different in some ways, because I don't know that there was just a ton of love that I felt. It was more of an obsession.
Mhm.
Um, but that's true. I mean, you don't ever marry someone thinking or go into any relationship thinking this is going to be truly awful. I don't even enjoy this person. I can't wait to get rid of them. You go in thinking we are going to build this life. So even if your feelings aren't there, your dream still is.
Mhm.
You've planned your future, you planned your life, and then you have kids, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also the beginning of the relationship that can cause victims to rationalize abusive behaviors more and more. I hear how at the beginning everything was great, everything was magical, has even been a word that I have heard a lot. So how about the beginning of your relationship? Was that something that you experienced? That magical, great, everything was so great feeling, or
I go, no. But it does happen. And I've seen it and I've had it in relationships. Since the thing is, everybody's on their best behavior in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
And abusers, someone who's an abuser knows what they need to do to trap you. So I always tell people who are starting relationships when they're like, it's so amazing. He's perfect. I never thought this would happen to me. He treats me like a princess. And I know it's moving so fast, but it just feels right. I'm always like, okay, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Because an abuser wants to say, I got to snag you quick and make you dependent on me. So that's people who like move in, after a month of dating, or they immediately want to get married. They have to snag you quick. So it starts off beautiful and great, and it just is rolling and so happy. And you ride this high, and then they've got you. And then reality kind of sets in, and it's too late. With my ex-husband, there were red flags from the beginning, but I was too insecure to know that that's what was happening. I just thought, I guess, I mean, this is the best I'm going to get. He keeps telling me he's the best I'm going to get. He's attractive and he's got a future ahead of him, and I'm not. And I want a future. He knew all the things to say to make me feel like, well, I mean, this kind of sucks, but I'm real lucky. At least he likes me. Right.
Okay. So looking back now, knowing everything that you do, when would you say the abuse started? What were, I mean, you talk about the red flags. Can you go a little deeper into that? And, what were some more red flags that you may not have even realized at the time? Were there people telling you, Megan, this isn't a good situation?
Yes. No, absolutely. Many people told me, no, this isn't going to work. And that I have changed. And that's one thing I always tell people too, like the women I work with, is you have people in your life, you have your village, right? And your village knows you and they love you, good, bad, and ugly. And that's the important part of having people in your life. So when your village starts to say, you're acting different, you're pulling away, or you seem upset more than you are happy. And I remember specifically my mom being like, you are always walking on eggshells. Like, I feel like you just live to make sure that he's not upset in any way possible. You have to pay attention to those. And I just didn't. I thought, you just don't understand our relationship. It's very passionate. Well, that's not passion. That's chaos. Um, And the other things I think I noticed too were his deep insecurities. And because he was a narcissist too, and that's a whole different kind of abuse. But when his insecurities would be triggered, I would know. I could see it coming and go, oh crap, I'm in for it. Because now he felt insecure. So his job was to make me feel worse. So that at least you could say, at least I'm not you. I mean, you're garbage, you're trash. And so I noticed that. And then quick to anger, mood swings. Part of the trauma bond that people don't really get into is the silent treatment. It's so abusive. It is such an abusive tactic when you're arguing with someone and you verbally attack them and then you shut down completely. So they can't come back and defend themselves or even apologize. You're done. You've shut them off. And then all they're trying to do is break through that door again. Mm-hmm. And then when you feel ready, you come back and say, okay, I guess I forgive you. And then they've got that high again.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what the signs are major. And it's so easy to brush things off, especially in the beginning. You know, the relationship is new, it's exciting, you're getting to know somebody, but we really need to work on keeping those red flags in the forefront of our minds when we are getting to know that person. And here are some red flags, just a list of some red flags that sometimes you can catch on to. You know, if the first one up top, not being allowed to or being afraid to make decisions for yourself, that's a major one. I know a lot of people who have went through that. There's a difference, to me at least, you know, if you get asked out for plans and you're like, well, let me see if I'm allowed to, rather than let me just check and see what's going on. You know, there's a
because it's
difference.
It's respectful to say to your partner, hey, the girls are wanting to go out. Is there anything that we had planned that I don't remember, or kind of what's your plan? That's respectful. But to say, hold on, let me check if I'm allowed.
Yes.
Is a whole different scenario.
Huge difference. Obviously the being physically hurt. But on this webinar, I really want to focus on more of the mental aspects of the abuse and the trauma bond. Megan, we had talked before and you had talked about that feeling a pounding or fluttering in your chest when your partner isn't happy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because not only, you know, we have the whole list of red flags up, but it's also those physical feelings that you experience when your partner is in a mood. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
I think that is, well, now what I know through all the counseling I've been through and all the research I've done is a lot of that is just like anxiety attacks and beginnings of panic attacks. But that situation where, I remember, and I know I don't need to be telling a ton of stories, but I remember one time him leaving to put gas in the car. And the second he closed the door, I went, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And my heart started fluttering and I could barely catch my breath. You know, you break out into like that cold sweat because I knew that I had left a McDonald's cup in the car. And because he was already kind of in a mood, and I knew little things that would trigger him, and me having left anything in the car was going to. And instead of him being back in like 20 minutes, it was an hour and it stretched on. And I, the whole time, sick, physically sick, like thinking I'm going to throw up. And I look back now, and of course he came back and it was not pretty, but I look back now and think, how insane is it that me as a human being, married with a child, cannot function thinking I left a cup in the car because I know the wrath that's coming. Just every time I work with women and I say, that feeling that you get, that you just kind of, and every victim survivor I work with are always going, yeah, you're like, oh God. And it's just like your heart pounds. That's one of the biggest red flags that we just missed. That's like, this is trauma. This is not normal. Mm-hmm. And you got to get out.
Yes. And those signs, they're just so important. And the biggest advice I can give, I think, is to trust your instincts. You know, if it doesn't feel right, if it makes you feel bad, it's not a good situation. If you're changing your behaviors, you're changing who you are for this person. It's not.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would say one big red flag too that I don't think it's talked about enough is if you have to lie
Mhm.
to your people, that's your biggest red flag. If you have to make something up, if you're making excuses. I'm not even talking about the girl that gets punched in the face and says, I ran into a door. I mean, I can't go to girls' night because we have some plans. We just have something going on. When in reality, he was like, I don't trust you. You're not leaving this house.
Mhm.
Or you're with your friends and they go to take a picture and post it. And you're like, oh my God, please don't. I just don't feel cute in this picture, but he's stalking your social media and he'll be mad because you're at a restaurant and 3 tables over or it's a table full of guys and he doesn't know that
Mhm.
you won't be over there later. So you just have to lie and cover up. If ever you are having to cover up for them or lie to your people, your village to protect them, that's a huge red flag.
Yes,
And it
definitely. It
happens way more than people think.
does. I completely agree with that. So, when did you start to really realize that you were not in a healthy environment? Was there a moment for you or a combination of moments? What was it?
Um, when we were dating, the first time I knew things weren't good. But the first thing that really I know he had an issue with his mom, and I was visiting and he was horrible to her and just screaming at her and talking so nasty. And I thought, okay, well, she's embarrassed that I'm hearing this. I'm embarrassed that I'm hearing this. I'm embarrassed that he's doing it. And I went to say something to him later. And that's when the physical first started. And no, we're not getting into that. But his response was so hateful and aggressive and like physical to me that I thought, okay, all right, well, this is my future. And we weren't married, but I mean, obviously I ended up marrying him. But I thought, okay, like, I don't know that this will ever be healthy because it's not like I came at him aggressively or saying, I can't believe I came at him going, I don't understand. Is this how
Mhm.
your family works? Like, this is not how mine works. And because I questioned him immediately, it was physical and verbal, and it just went a little out of control from there. So dating, that's the first time that I really kind of thought, okay,
Okay. And
this isn't
so
healthy.
that was dating. So obviously in the future you guys got married. So what would you say, since you saw that as unhealthy, but you still stayed, what would you say your mental health was like at that time that kept you there and you didn't just immediately run for the hills after that?
It wasn't good. I feel like I was just kind of beat down by then. I just really felt like everything he said must be true. And, you asked if people were warning me. Absolutely, people were warning me and saying, you're not acting right. Something's not right. Get out. And then I felt, because you see me as a failure, because he's telling me I'm a failure. And if you're telling me I'm making a bad decision by being with him, then clearly you think I'm a failure. So I'm going to prove you wrong and I'm going to make this work and I'm going to make him a better person. And then I win and I'm right. And you'll think I'm something special because I turned this chaotic abuser into like this wonderful, loving human. Well, it doesn't work like that. And I was so insecure and I pulled away. I became very good at faking it. Um, very good, dangerously good at being able to fake it, even with people close to me. Um, I pulled away from my family. My family has always been close, my extended family, my cousins. And I remember even my cousin passed like 13 years ago. And I was with my family and I was with my ex-husband at the time, and I couldn't even really connect. I tried, but I lost the ability to really be like intimate with them because if I let he had me build up a wall to protect myself. And if I let anybody in, then they would see all the damage that was behind our closed doors, and I couldn't allow that.
Hmm. So how many times did you attempt to leave? And then can you explain why you went back?
Sure. Uh, when we were married, I think 4, maybe 5 times I attempted to leave. And each time I went back, I was raised very religiously,
Mhm.
and I was a pastor's wife when we were married. And I went back because, and religious abuse is a whole nother issue, a whole nother webinar. But I went back because I was told repeatedly, that's my job. He had a very bad pornography addiction too. And I remember meeting with our counselors, who told me, and I said, like, I want to know what kind of porn he's obsessed with. And I was told, how perverse of you. Why are you so perverted that you would want to know that? What is wrong with your relationship with God that you would be so perverted? And I'm like, how am I the pervert? I just think, like, if it's children or men, I think that's something I should be aware of. And I was told no. And all of his damage and um, his inability to control his anger control issues, which abusers don't have issues with controlling their anger because they control it all the time. You're the person they choose not to control it on. They don't lose it on people on the street or people they need to impress. They come home and lose it. So
Mhm.
never fall into that trap. But I remember being told that was his cross to bear. And as his wife, my godly duty was to help him carry that cross. So I went back so many times because I was told, this is like, you work for God now, and you're supposed to endure this because this is the devil fighting your relationship and your marriage. And I just basically had to be a sacrificial lamb to his abuse because that was my job. And I went back because every time I got beat down and I got told, what are you doing to make him mad? What
Mhm.
sin is going on with you that is bringing this into your home? Because it can't just be him.
Mhm. Yeah, and that happens a lot. So can I ask what made you finally leave for good? What was that final moment where you were done and gone?
Yeah. I When we first got married, I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And then after one time of me leaving him, um, we had my daughter. That was on purpose. Um, you know, one of those stories where you think a baby will fix it. It will not, but she's amazing and I'm glad that she's here. But then I got pregnant again and I didn't tell him. And I kept praying, God, it's a miracle that I got pregnant again in the first place. Let me say that because that was a rare occurrence for us to be physical. And I kept praying, I cannot have this baby. I cannot do it. If I have this baby, I am trapped here for the rest of my life and I can't do it. And I just kept praying, God, please take this baby. Well, I had a miscarriage. And as a mom, you're a mom,
Mhm.
you know, that that baby wasn't a thought, like a little thing that's growing in my body. Every time I prayed about not having this child, I would, it was almost tangible. I would see this kid. I would see this baby next to Kenzie and be thinking, how do I manage these two with this monster? How do I do it? And so when I lost the baby, it felt like I murdered a living person that I had pictured next to my other child the whole time. And I just lost it completely. And I thought, I'm a horrible person. And it took years of counseling and therapy to kind of change my view of it. And I still struggle. But um, I was, we had friends visiting from Louisiana and they were asleep in the basement. And my ex-husband was asleep downstairs because we never shared a room. And I remember laying in bed just crying, Nobody knew what I was going through. Nobody knew that I was pregnant. Nobody knew that I was having a miscarriage. And I just was like, I can't, you know what? I can't do this anymore. So I'm done. And I knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to park my car on this certain bridge, and I knew how I was going to end it. So I put on my coat and my shoes and I started to walk down the stairs. And I don't know everybody's thoughts on a higher power or God. If I'm honest, I don't know myself some days. But as I was walking down the stairs, I felt this pressure. Like it pushed me down to where I was sitting down. And I was sobbing and I kept fighting it, like trying to get up. And if you don't believe in God, then just the power of the subconscious. I don't know, but I couldn't move, but I could cry. And I cried. I have no idea how I didn't wake up everybody in the house, but it was just guttural, and it was just letting all this out. And it felt like an hour and a half, and it may have been 10 minutes. It may have been 30 seconds. I don't know, until I felt like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm done. If I'm going to end my life, and that's my only option to get out of here, or I just freaking leave and change everybody's lives forever, I'm doing it, because my kid needs to grow up with me, not him. And as soon as that clicked, I could all of a sudden get up. And I got up, went upstairs, went back to bed, slept good. A week later, told him I'm out.
Yeah.
A Sunday night after church, I just said I'm leaving. And I never looked back.
Good. What was that like when you left? I know sometimes when you do leave, that can be just as hard as being in the relationship. Because at least when you're in the relationship, you kind of know what to expect. But when you're out, it's just you. So how did you feel about that? And how did you get through that?
It was hard because, you can't divorce the assistant pastor and then still work at the church. So that was a huge part of my identity. And all of a sudden, then I'm having an identity crisis. I'm having a religious crisis and arguing with God. And then my whole family, nobody lived up there. So I was alone and trying to figure out with my daughter, and so much aggression coming from his side, or even passive aggression. It was just, don't do this. You're making the bad decision. You're making the wrong decision. And then with the trauma bonding, the love bonding from him, just all of a sudden he's willing to do anything for me. I mean, except for give up his position and go get help. That's crazy. But anything else, whatever car I want to buy, he'll buy me, whatever house, as if those things mattered. But I felt trapped and confused and lost. And truly at the end of it, I just thought, I just want to get out. I didn't scream abuse on the way out. I didn't tell everybody my story and say, this is what he's done. I just said, if I go quietly, can I please go? Mm-hmm. And then I built, I had still had great friends that still are my loves and my friends today that helped me. But I went a little bit crazy. I mean, if I'm completely honest, I made some not great decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and two, you got to experience a freedom that you were not used to,
Well, even from the church, it's just it was a whole different world. And I ate it up.
Yes. So of course, once you leave, you go through the feelings of being lost, the identity crisis, and then, you go a little crazy with the freedom that you get to experience that you're not used to. But eventually there comes a time where you have to start healing from that trauma. So what steps have you taken since then to start that healing journey?
Lots of therapy, lots of counseling. I tell people all the time, I just told I had a conversation with someone recently about it. Should I continue counseling. Yes, always. If you're in an abusive situation, if you have an abusive past or traumatic past, to think that you can do it alone is so beautifully naive. And you're so strong and you're brave, but you can't do it by yourself. It's just really impossible. I tried to do it by myself for years. And then I would do a little counseling here and there and stop because I was good and cured. And I always like to say, and everybody downplays their abuse. And I had a wonderful counselor in Ohio, Pat, and she told me one time, and I may have told you this before, that I was really judgmental. She said, "You're the worst kind of victim because you pretend to not be a victim because you judge victims." And I was like, that doesn't make sense, because I always said, well, it wasn't Lifetime movie abuse, because I felt like Lifetime movie abuse is bad. And, like you're bruised and you're in the hospital, most of mine was emotional and some physical, but you can't see it. And she just said, you judge those people. And she was absolutely right. I thought, well, I mean, if you beat me to a bloody pulp and put me in the hospital, obviously I would have left. So what's your problem? And that changed everything for me, and the way I felt about it and the way I thought about it. And so then I owned my abuse, and I started understanding that I was a survivor who'd been abused, and these are the things that happened to me. So then I thought, well, I'm now here. So I'm good. I'm cured. Great. And so I didn't get any more help until I moved to Arkansas. I got away from everything, all of it, truly escaped. And because I had not ever truly worked through things, I had a nervous breakdown. I mean, another suicide issue. And I was put in the hospital for a week, maybe a little over, in a psych ward, which that'll really straighten you up. I've been twice. And those are traumatic things, but sometimes necessary. And you just have to, I just get so sad and hurt for women and men who have been in these situations, who think I can do it on my own, or I'll read a book. Read your books, listen to podcasts, but talk to an educated individual who can say, there's a path to healing and there's a path to getting over trauma, and let me help you walk that, because you're just not capable of doing it alone. It's the same as if I took that test for the Enneagram study and I had to call my sister. I'm like, which one is me? And she's like, that defeats the purpose. You have to take it answering them honestly. But if you're someone who has dealt with this trauma, you're never going to be fully honest about it to yourself, because you don't want to admit it happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a journey. So you have been healing now for this past year you're doing your healing out loud, which
Oh yeah.
I think is great. But how long has it been that you've been actively healing and seeking therapy and working through all of this?
I would say probably 6-7 years.
Okay. Yeah. So just to put that out there, it's not an overnight fix. Like she
Oh
said,
God,
it
no.
takes a long time to deal
And I'm
with it,
still in
accept
therapy.
it. Yes. Yes. So if there was any advice you could give to someone who thinks that they may be in an abusive relationship right now, what would that be?
Talk to someone. Find a person and sit down and say, I need to tell you what's going on in my life, and I need your non-judgmental reaction. And you have to be careful of who you choose. Because some people judge you, and then now they know your truth. And so if you go back, then they're going to say, oh, you're weak. But you need to be able to if you can put it out to someone, or even if you can just write everything on paper, this is the outline of my relationship. This is what happens on a day-to-day. And if you write it out and you're embarrassed to show someone, then you're in an abusive situation. If you tell someone and they react and say, this is not normal, this is not okay, then you're in an abusive situation and you have to get out, and it's not easy. I would always say, check your local domestic violence shelters. Every area has one. Even if you just call them, there's a national domestic violence hotline. Even if you call and say, hey, you don't know me, this is what's happening. Is this right or wrong? Because a lot of times you will chalk it up to he's having a bad day. Or like you said, the trauma bonding of, I don't know, but he's so great yesterday. And then today it's been horrible. And I really don't know. Ask somebody. Don't trust yourself. Ask somebody, because someone else saying, okay, this is not okay, does something to you. It may embarrass you and it may make you feel like you have failed, but you need that. You need some sort of check and some accountability in order to be able to get yourself out.
Perfect.
And make a safety plan. I always tell everybody, make a safety plan, because it's not easy to get out and it can be the most dangerous time. But do some research. Call me, message me, and I'll help walk you through it.
Yes. And then for somebody who may know someone who's in an abusive relationship and they're trying to, or, they're trying to heal, they just got out, they're trying to heal from that relationship. What kind of advice could you give to them to support that person? I know a lot of times it's really hard to be a support system for somebody who's went through trauma, because you might not always know what to say or do. So what advice would you have for someone in that situation?
Hopefully you can't empathize too much, because that means you've been through it. But my best advice is to make sure they know you're a safe place, because that's what they need right then. They don't need to come in and you tell them how to run their life. They don't need you to tell them these are the mistakes you've made, or this person is a monster over and over, because for most people, this monster is the love of their life. This is who they wanted to grow old with and live out all their dreams with. So saying they're a monster puts them in the situation of feeling of they have to defend them. And then you're just circling right back to trauma bonding and going back. So don't attack, be a safe space to listen. I always talk about building a nest. So if you have someone who has been through it and you're trying to help them, your job in the beginning is to build them this nice, fluffy, comfortable nest where they feel safe and protected and covered and sheltered, and they don't have to worry about judgment or hurt or pain. They can just mourn and cry and be themselves. But then it start to remove some comforts from the nest, because if all you do is pile on comfort and love, and it's a hard job to help a victim, it really is. But if all you do, they need that in the beginning, but then they need some accountability of you saying, okay, we've done the sad part, and we can have those days every other day. But every third day, you're going to do something to help heal. So you're going to listen to this podcast, or you have to have made an appointment with your counselor. You need to be following up with your doctor. What have you done every third day to get healthy?
Mhm.
It's a hard bend now on both sides, and it's incredibly frustrating. And especially if you're supporting someone and then they go back, it can be so heartbreaking to say, "Oh, all that work," and you're just right back where you start.
Mhm.
You can't make them live their lives that you want to. It's hard and it's horrible, but it's just like with someone who's addicted to drugs who keeps going back. It's an addiction and it's painful, and you can't fix them. All you can do is give them all the tools you can to, and truly be a safe, loving space.
Yes. Thank you, Megan. And I want to take a minute to put on the screen some information on June and Jenkins, which is where Megan is working. Um, like she said, you can always feel free to reach out to her for any sort of support, guidance. Megan, can you take a minute and tell us a little bit about June and Jenkins?
Absolutely. It is a domestic violence shelter. We work with men more men than you would imagine, and women and children who are going through domestic abuse. That is all sorts of abuse. People think, we talked about trauma bonding today, but people think of abuse as they just think like physical or verbal. When there is like narcissistic and financial abuse, and there's emotional and sexual and all these different kinds of things that play into it, stalking and harassment. And so we help people who have been dealing with that. We help them get the legal help they need, but we also do classes on financial security, because leaving an abusive relationship, a big fear is I can't financially live without this other person. So we're going to help teach you how to do that. Domestic violence classes, parenting classes, anything you need. The numbers there, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, a great tool. And normally when you call that number, they connect you to the shelter closest to you, which is great because then you have an immediate resource. So we've been doing this for years and years, and we love our community and the people we serve and are happy to continue the work.
Thank you. And thank you again, Megan, so much for coming on and sharing your story today. Before I end everything, I want to open it up to see if anybody has any questions. So if anybody does, you can go ahead and enter them in the chat box, or just go ahead and unmute. That's fine as well. We'll give that a couple minutes. And if nobody has anything, you can always feel free to reach out to Megan, or you can email me, reach out to Just Be You as well. We can connect you to local resources, either in the Ohio area, Michigan area. I can be reached at the email below. And don't forget to be on the lookout for the app Be Positive. It'll be available on Android and iPhone very soon here. If there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and end things for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, thank you, Megan. And don't forget to like us on Facebook to keep up to date with our scheduling. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Michaela.
Thanks, Megan.